Thomas had practiced for this moment for months, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer scale of the council chamber. Tiered seating rose hundreds of meters on all sides, filled with representatives from over 500 species, beings of all forms and compositions. Some appeared almost human, others were completely alien. Crystalline structures that pulsed with internal light, gaseous entities contained within specialized suits, massive insectoid creatures whose compound eyes tracked the human delegation's every move. At the center of the chamber stood the High Council itself, 7 beings representing the oldest, most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. Grand Arbiter Zoloth, a 12-foot-tall creature composed of what appeared to be living mercury, rose from his position at the center. The representatives of Earth will approach the circle of truth. Zoloth's voice resonated without apparent need for amplification, the mercury-like substance of his form rippling with each word. Thomas led his team, 4 humans chosen to represent Earth's military, scientific, diplomatic, and intelligence communities, to the indicated circle embedded in the floor. As they stepped onto it, a soft blue light activated around them. "This is a momentous occasion," Zoloth continued. "It has been 50,000 cycles since a new spacefaring species has been granted audience with the full council." A low murmur spread through the assembled representatives. Thomas stood tall, keenly aware that Earth's future hung on what happened in the next few minutes. "Earth stands accused of violations against Galactic Protocol 7329B. Unauthorized technological advancement beyond permitted parameters for a Level 3 civilization," Zoloth announced, his mercury-like form rippling with each word. "The evidence gathered by our reconnaissance vessels is incontrovertible." Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing images of Earth's quantum computing arrays, experimental gravity manipulation devices, and nascent wormhole technology, all developed in just 30 years since first contact. "The penalty," Zoloth continued, "is immediate technological regression and planetary quarantine for no less than 500 standard years." The Marathi delegation, insectoid beings known for their military might, chittered with satisfaction. Their supreme commander Krex rose to his full height. "The humans have violated every development timeline we established. They must be contained before they become a threat." Thomas remained calm, hands clasped behind his back. He had expected this response. Earth had indeed developed faster than any species in recorded galactic history, pushing the boundaries of what the Council permitted. But they had their reasons. "Grand Arbiter," Thomas finally spoke, his voice clear and steady. "With respect to this august body, Earth requests the right of arbitration by demonstration." The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. The right was ancient, rarely invoked, and even more rarely granted. It would allow humans to demonstrate why their advancement should be permitted, rather than punished. Zoloth's mercurial form pulsed with what might have been surprise. "You invoke a right not called upon in 7,000 years. Do you understand what failure would mean?" Thomas nodded. "If we fail to prove our worthiness, Earth accepts not just the standard punishment but complete dissolution of our planetary defense systems." This was a bold move. Without defenses, Earth would be completely vulnerable, a gamble no species had been willing to take in recent memory. "Human shows either great courage or great foolishness," remarked a crystalline being from the upper tiers, voice tinkling like wind chimes. Thomas turned toward Krex and the Marathi delegation. "Perhaps the distinguished commander fears what he doesn't understand. Our advancements were necessary because we discovered something in the void between galaxies that even this council doesn't know about." The chamber fell silent, then exploded in outrage. Security drones swarmed toward the human delegation. Accusations of lies and deception echoed throughout the chamber. Zoloth's form solidified partially, a sign of extreme emotion. "Explain yourself immediately, human." Thomas nodded to Dr. Eleanor Reyes, Earth Science Officer, who activated a small device. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, then zoomed out to show something moving in the intergalactic void. Massive, incomprehensible shapes traveling slowly but deliberately toward the Milky Way. "We call them the Harvesters," Thomas said quietly. Yet his voice carried throughout the now silent chamber. "And they've already consumed 3 galaxies according to our calculations. They'll reach our outer systems within 40 years. Zoloth's form shimmered with what might have been fear. "This is Verification is required. Of course, Thomas agreed. But while your scientists verify our data, know this. Every species that has attempted to halt humanity's progress has never returned to tell about it. Not because we destroyed them, but because we saved them, integrated them, showed them why our methods, while unorthodox, are necessary for survival. The human delegation stood firm as the chamber descended into pandemonium. The 5-minute timer that regulated speaking time in the council expired, but no one moved to silence Thomas as he continued. The question isn't whether humanity has advanced too quickly. The question is whether the rest of you can advance quickly enough to survive what's coming. We request a joint military expedition to the coordinates we've provided. See for yourselves what approaches, then judge us. Zoloth conferred briefly with the other 6 High Council members, their forms shifting and merging in what appeared to be their method of private communication. Finally, Zoloth addressed the chamber. This council hereby authorizes a verification expedition to the coordinates provided by Earth. Commander Krex will lead the Marathi contingent, alongside representatives from the Volcrion, Jaxiri, and Ixalan species. Ambassador Ward will represent Earth. Thomas bowed respectfully. We are grateful for the Council's wisdom. Earth's newest vessel, the Prometheus, stands ready to depart immediately. As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Dr. Reyes leaned close to Thomas. Do you think they believed us? She whispered. Thomas kept his eyes forward. They're curious enough to look. That's all we needed. The Marathi Supreme Commander Krex stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, mandibles clicking in agitation as he studied the empty space around them. There is nothing here, human. Your deception will not be forgiven. Admiral Ortiz remained calm on the shared communication channel. Wait for it. Our sensors detected temporal distortion in this region. The harvesters exist partially outside normal space-time. The Volcrion science officer, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, spoke up. Our instruments are detecting something. Quantum fluctuations unlike anything in our records. Suddenly, space itself seemed to fold inward approximately 2 light minutes from their position. What emerged defied comprehension. A massive structure that resembled a biomechanical web spanning thousands of kilometers, pulsing with energies that made the sensors on all 5 ships overload and reset. By the ancestral flame, whispered the Jaxiri captain, a reptilian being whose species prided themselves on emotional control. That's just a scout, Admiral Ortiz said quietly. According to our calculations, there are thousands more with the main cluster following behind. Supreme Commander Krex's compound eyes fixed on the human admiral. How did you discover this when the Council's own deep space monitoring network detected nothing? Because we were looking, replied Dr. Marcus Kim, Earth's chief xenobiologist. Humans have always gazed into the abyss, preparing for worst-case scenarios. While the Council focused on maintaining stability and controlling advancement rates, we dedicated resources to watching the darkness between galaxies. The massive entity began emitting radiation pulses that scrambled communications. When they restored systems, the Volcrion science officer's energy form flickered with alarm. It's scanning us, and I'm detecting smaller entities deploying from the main structure. Defensive positions, ordered Admiral Ortiz. Do not fire unless fired upon. The Marathi commander chittered in anger. You brought us into a trap. We brought you to the truth, Ortiz countered. Now watch. The ESS Prometheus moved forward, deploying what appeared to be small satellites. Once in position, they activated, creating a complex energy field. What is this technology? Demanded the Ixalan representative, whose crystalline form refracted light in patterns indicating confusion. We call it a quantum mirror, explained Dr. Kim. It reflects the entity's own scanning frequencies back at it, but with a specific modulation that the effect was immediate and dramatic. The harvester entity convulsed as though in pain, its structural integrity faltering. The smaller deployed entities changed course, now moving toward the Prometheus with clear hostile intent. Evasive maneuvers, Krex shouted to his crew, but the human ship held position, its quantum mirrors intensifying their effect. The harvester scout began to fold in on itself, its enormous structure collapsing into a singularity that vanished with a flash of radiation. Silence dominated the communication channels for nearly a full minute. Finally, the Volcrian spoke. That, that should have been impossible. The energy requirements alone? Admiral Ortiz's expression remained grave. That was one scout, and we expended 40% of our ship's total energy reserves to eliminate it. We need the Council's resources, knowledge, and cooperation if we're going to survive what's coming. Commander Krex's mandibles clicked slowly as he processed what he'd witnessed. The Council will never believe this without direct evidence. Then we go deeper, Ortiz replied. The main cluster is still 3 light-years out. We can intercept a larger group of scouts, gather irrefutable proof, and return to the Council. The Jaxery captain's scales shifted color to indicate deep concern. No expedition has ever encountered entities of this magnitude and returned to tell of it. Admiral Ortiz's eyes reflected the starlight as she responded, "That's the point, Captain. No one returned after fighting humanity, because we showed them a truth they couldn't ignore. Now we're showing you. The question is, will you return with us to warn the others, or will pride keep you from accepting our help?" The ships drifted in the emptiness of space as the alien representatives conferred among themselves. Finally, Krex turned to face Admiral Ortiz. "We will proceed deeper. But know this, human. If this proves to be some elaborate deception, my species will demand Earth's complete disarmament and colonization." Ortiz nodded. "And if it's real? Then the galaxy faces a threat unlike any in recorded history," the Marathi commander replied, his usually harsh voice subdued. The 5 ships adjusted course, heading toward coordinates where Earth's long-range probes had detected higher concentrations of harvester activity. As they traveled, Dr. Kim shared Earth's research data with the alien scientists, revealing the full scope of what humanity had discovered. "We first detected anomalous readings 3 Earth years ago," he explained, displaying sensor logs. "At first we thought they were natural phenomena, strange quantum fluctuations in the void between galaxies. But the patterns were too regular, too structured. The Volcrian scientists studied the data, energy form pulsing rapidly. These patterns, they suggest intelligence, but unlike any form we've encountered." "Exactly," Kim confirmed. "And when we tracked the movements of these fluctuations across multiple galaxies and ran predictive models, we found something disturbing. 3 neighboring dwarf galaxies had undergone unexplained stellar extinction events over the past 1,000,000 years, all following the same pattern." The Ixalan crystalline scientist chimed in. "A pattern that leads directly to our galaxy." "Yes," Ortiz confirmed, "which is why Earth accelerated its technological development beyond Council guidelines. We didn't have time to wait." Commander Krex had been silent, reviewing the human data. If these calculations are correct, the main harvester cluster could reach populated Council worlds within 50 years. 42 years. 3 months by our most conservative estimate, corrected Kim. Less if they continue to accelerate. The conversation halted as ship sensors detected new anomalies ahead. The fleet slowed, approaching cautiously. What they found changed everything. Not just 1 or 2 harvester scouts, but dozens, clustered around what appeared to be a construction of some kind. The structure spanned millions of kilometers, a vast web-like array that pulsed with energies beyond Council classification systems. "It's a transit gate," whispered Ortiz, horror evident in her voice. "They're building a way to bring the main cluster here faster." As they watched, portions of the structure became visible in normal space while others faded into quantum uncertainty. The harvesters were building across dimensions, creating something that existed simultaneously in multiple states of reality. "We need to leave," Krex ordered. "Now." The Council must see this immediately. But before they could retreat, sensors on all ships blared warnings. Several harvester scouts had detected their presence and were moving to intercept. "They've adapted to our quantum signatures," reported the Prometheus science officer. "Our stealth systems are no longer effective." Ortiz made a rapid decision. "Prometheus will draw them off. The Council vessels must return with this evidence." "That's suicide," Krex objected. "That's necessity," Ortiz countered. "Earth has suspected this threat for years. You've known about it for hours. The galaxy needs your testimony more than ours." Before further arguments could be made, the Prometheus launched toward the approaching harvesters, quantum mirrors deploying in a defensive screen that gave the Council ships time to initiate emergency wormhole jumps. The last thing Krex saw before his ship entered the wormhole was the human vessel, impossibly small against the vast alien constructs, fighting a battle they could not possibly win, but buying time for the others to escape. The chamber gradually quieted, though tension remained palpable in the air. Supreme Commander Krex stepped forward, his chitinous exoskeleton still bearing scars from a skirmish with a smaller harvester entity during their return journey. "The humans' claims are verified," Krex announced, his mandibles clicking slowly in what his species recognized as grave concern. "The threat is real and more severe than any we have faced in recorded history." "And the human vessel?" "The Prometheus?" asked a representative from a gas giant species. "Lost," Krex replied simply. "They sacrificed themselves to ensure our escape and the delivery of this evidence." A somber mood settled over the chamber. Then, unexpectedly, the main doors opened. Ambassador Thomas Ward entered, accompanied by Admiral Dahlia Ortiz, her uniform torn and burned but very much alive. Gasps and murmurs swept through the chamber. Zoloth's form shifted in surprise. "Admiral Ortiz was reported lost with the Prometheus," the Grand Arbiter stated. Ortiz stepped forward. "The Prometheus was lost, yes. But before its destruction, we deployed emergency pods with key personnel and data. We've spent the last 2 weeks in deep space, transmitting distress signals that Earth vessels eventually detected." Thomas scanned the chamber, noting the expressions of the various species. "We come with additional information. The harvesters have accelerated their timeline. They'll reach the outer systems within 30 years, not 40 as previously calculated." The council chamber buzzed with renewed alarm. Zoloth conferred briefly with the other High Council members before addressing the assembled representatives. "In light of the verified evidence, the charges against Earth for unauthorized technological advancement are hereby dismissed," the Grand Arbiter announced. "Instead, this council proposes the formation of the Harvester Defense Initiative, with joint leadership shared between the Council and Earth." Thomas stepped forward. "Earth accepts and proposes immediate sharing of our quantum mirror technology with all Council races." "The Marathi Confederation supports this proposal," Commander Krex added, surprising many who knew his species' traditional stance against sharing advanced technology with younger civilizations. The Volcrian Elder, whose energy form still showed distortions from proximity to the harvesters, pulsed with agreement. "Our civilization has existed for 50,000 years, yet we have never encountered anything like these entities. The human quantum mirror technology represents an approach we would never have considered, because it violates 6 different Council prohibitions on cross-dimensional manipulation," noted the Ixalan representative dryly, crystal facets glinting. "Precisely," Dr. Eleanor Reyes spoke up, having joined the human delegation. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our willingness to ignore conventional wisdom when survival is at stake. We need the Council's vast knowledge and resources, but you need our perspective." A vote was called, and within the hour, the Harvester Defense Initiative was officially established. Representatives from 37 species immediately volunteered to join, with Earth as a key strategic partner, despite being the youngest spacefaring civilization in the Alliance. As the formal session ended, Ambassador Thomas approached Commander Krex in a quieter side chamber. "I must admit, Commander, I didn't expect such strong support from the Marathi. Your people have historically been the most conservative regarding technological advancement." Krex's compound eyes studied the human carefully. "What I witnessed changed my perspective. The harvesters care nothing for our carefully maintained galactic order. They are consumption embodied." His mandibles clicked softly before adding, "And I saw how your admiral was willing to sacrifice her ship to save ours. That is not the action of a species that must be contained." Thomas nodded appreciatively. "We have much to learn from each other, Commander. The Marathi military traditions span thousands of years. We've been in space for barely a century. Yet you developed defenses against a threat we didn't even detect," Krex noted. "Perhaps age does not always equate to wisdom." Across the chamber, Admiral Ortiz was deep in conversation with the Volcrian Elder, whose energy form rippled with interest as she explained the principles behind Earth's quantum mirror technology. "The key insight came when we realized the harvesters exist, partially outside conventional spacetime," Ortiz explained. "They perceive reality through quantum probability fields rather than fixed positions. The mirrors essentially create a feedback loop in their perception, causing them to fold in on themselves." "Fascinating," The Volcrian's translator rendered his pulsing energy patterns. Our scientists would never have pursued this approach. The energy requirements alone should make it impossible. Ortiz smiled. That's where another human innovation proved crucial. We developed a new method of energy storage and transmission, based on zero-point field manipulation. The Volcrians' energy form dimmed momentarily, their equivalent of shock. That technology is theoretically impossible according to Council scientific consensus. So we were told, Ortiz replied. But faced with extinction, impossible becomes merely a challenge. As discussions continued throughout the Council complex, Earth's representatives found themselves no longer viewed as upstarts to be controlled, but as valuable allies bringing fresh perspectives to ancient civilizations. Within days, joint research facilities were established on 17 worlds, with human scientists working alongside alien counterparts to refine and expand the quantum mirror technology. Council shipyards began retrofitting vessels with the new defensive systems, while long-dormant military installations across the galaxy were reactivated and upgraded. Thomas stood with Dr. Reyes on a viewing platform, overlooking the massive Council spaceport, watching as ships from dozens of species arrived and departed in an unprecedented mobilization effort. "Do you think we can win?" Reyes asked quietly. Thomas considered the question carefully. The combined knowledge of the Council races spans hundreds of thousands of years. Earth brings new approaches they would never have considered. Together, yes, I believe we have a chance. The Volcrian elder told me something interesting today, Reyes said. There's an old saying among Council species. No one returned after fighting humanity. It was meant as a warning about our supposed aggression. Now they're beginning to understand it differently. How so? Thomas asked. No one returned the same after fighting alongside humanity, Reyes clarified. We change perspectives, challenge assumptions, find possibilities where others see only rules and limitations. As they spoke, a massive Council dreadnought passed overhead, its ancient hull now integrated with human-designed quantum mirror arrays, a physical embodiment of the new partnership forming between Earth and the galaxy's elder civilizations. Thomas watched it with a mixture of pride and concern. Let's just hope it's enough. The harvesters are still coming, and we have much work to do before they arrive. Below them, representatives from species that had been traveling the stars before humans had mastered fire now listened intently to Earth scientists explaining new defensive concepts. A fundamental shift had occurred. Humanity was no longer on trial. They were now essential allies in the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. Admiral Ortiz stood in the Central Command Center beneath the Rocky Mountains, studying holographic projections of the latest simulations. Beside her, the Volcrian Elder Zinthar and Mrothi Commander Krex observed with their respective sensory organs. The quantum mirror arrays are now deployable on all major Council vessels, Ortiz explained, but they're still not powerful enough for the main harvester cluster. Zinthar's energy form pulsed with concern, and our attempts to communicate with the entities have failed entirely. They appear to perceive all organized matter as simply resources to be consumed. Then we must strike first, Krex asserted, mandibles clicking decisively. The combined fleet is nearly ready. With human consciousness integration technology guiding our weapons, we could launch a preemptive attack on the advanced scouts. Before Ortiz could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. A communications officer rushed toward them. Admiral, we're detecting multiple unauthorized wormhole signatures in the Sol system. Council ships are emerging, but they're not from the Allied fleet. The main display activated, showing 15 warships bearing the insignia of the Drak Imperium, an isolationist Council race that had refused to join the defense initiative. This is High Marshal Vox of the Drak Imperium, announced a gray-skinned humanoid with yellow eyes. By special authority of the Galactic Security Committee, we are here to confiscate all human consciousness transfer technology and quantum mirror research. Ortiz's expression hardened. On whose authority? The full Council approved our joint initiative. A secret session of the Security Committee has determined that human technology represents an existential threat equal to or greater than the harvester entities, Vox replied coldly. Surrender your research or we will take it by force. Commander Krex stepped forward, his warrior caste markings prominently displayed. The Marathi Confederation stands with Earth. This action violates council law and the emergency provisions. Vox's expression didn't change. The Mrothi have been deemed compromised. Our intelligence suggests several of your high command have undergone consciousness transfer procedures. You are no longer considered fully organic sentience under council definition. The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. Zinthar's energy form flared with anger. This is absurd. I have personally overseen the transfer protocols. No permanent transfers have been conducted outside of emergency situations. On the display, the Drac vessels moved into attack formation around Earth's orbital defenses. You have 1 hour to surrender all research and technology, Vox stated. After that, we will secure it ourselves. The transmission cut. Admiral Ortiz immediately activated the facility's secure protocols. Get me Ambassador Ward at the Council immediately, she ordered. And alert all Earth defense forces. This could get ugly fast. Commander Krex's compound eyes fixed on Ortiz. Is it true? Have members of my species undergone permanent transfers? Ortiz met his gaze steadily. 3 of your wounded from the expedition requested temporary transfers while their bodies healed. All were scheduled to return once healing was complete, and yet they haven't, observed Zinthar quietly. Ortiz's silence was answer enough. Because they chose not to, came a new voice. Dr. Reyes entered the command center, accompanied by a being that appeared to be Mrothi, but moved with unusual fluidity. Admiral, this is Subcommander Taxil. He was one of the 3. The Mrothi in question stepped forward. Though he bore the exoskeletal appearance of his species, subtle differences were apparent. His carapace had an almost metallic sheen, and his movements lacked the characteristic stiffness of the insectoid Mrothi. My consciousness was transferred while my body was repaired, Taxil explained, his voice carrying harmonics impossible for natural Mrothi vocal organs. But during integration, I experienced clarity. Our minds were never meant to be so limited by biological constraints. I chose to remain integrated. Commander Krex's antennae flattened against his head, a sign of profound distress in his species. You are no longer Mrothi. I am more than I was, Taxil countered. I remain myself, my memories, values, loyalties intact, but I can now perceive and process information in ways our ancestors could never imagine. Ways we will need if we are to defeat the Harvesters. The facility shuddered as something impacted the planetary defense shields above. They're not waiting the hour, Ortiz growled, checking tactical displays. The Drac are deploying ground forces near our secondary research facilities in Africa and Asia. Ambassador Ward's face appeared on a communication screen, his expression grim. Admiral, the Council is in chaos. The Drac acted without full Council authorization, but they've convinced enough members that humanity is creating a hybrid species that could eventually replace all organic life. Reyes looked up sharply. That was never our intention. Intention is irrelevant now, Ward replied. The Drac and their allies believe humans have violated the most fundamental council law, the preservation of distinct species identity. They're calling it existential self-defense. Admiral Ortiz surveyed the tactical displays, noting the positions of Allied vessels versus the Drac fleet. Earth's defenses were formidable, but a prolonged conflict would devastate the planet and destroy any hope of unified resistance against the Harvesters. Ambassador, I need time, she said finally. Can you keep the Council debating while we implement Contingency Alpha? Ward's expression showed he understood the gravity of what she was suggesting. I'll do what I can. But Ortiz, if you activate Alpha, there's no going back. The Council will see it as confirmation of their worst fears. If the alternative is watching Earth burn and the galaxy fall to the Harvesters afterward, I'll take that chance, she replied. After Ward's transmission ended, Commander Krex turned to Ortiz. What is Contingency Alpha? Dr. Reyes and Admiral Ortiz exchanged glances before Reyes spoke. A distributed consciousness network. Every human who volunteered for temporary integration had their neural patterns mapped and stored in isolated quantum matrices. Contingency Alpha would connect those patterns into a unified defense system capable of operating all Earth technology simultaneously. A collective mind, Zinthar whispered, energy form flickering with something like awe. Not quite, Ortiz corrected. Individual consciousness remains distinct, but they can share information and resources at quantum speeds. Think of it as A democracy where voting and implementation happen at the speed of thought. Above them, the facility shuddered again as Drac forces engaged Earth's orbital defenses. You realize, Krex said quietly, that activating this system will confirm everything the Drac have accused humanity of developing. Admiral Ortiz's expression was resolute. Sometimes, Commander, the only way to disprove an enemy's assumptions about your character is to first survive their attack. She turned to Dr. Reyes. Initiate, Alpha, and may whatever gods might be watching forgive us for what comes. Next, throughout the facility, hundreds of specially prepared chambers activated. Within them, human volunteers, scientists, soldiers, engineers who had undergone previous temporary integrations, connected to neural interfaces. Their consciousness transferred into the quantum network that spanned the planet. On the command center displays, Earth's defense systems came alive with unprecedented coordination. Orbital platforms previously operating independently now functioned as a single unified system. Ground-based weapon emplacements adjusted with perfect tactical awareness. The Drac invasion force found itself facing defenses that anticipated their every move, countering with precision that seemed impossible. Their ships were disabled one by one, systems shut down by targeted electromagnetic pulses that left crews unharmed but powerless. Within 17 minutes, the entire Drac fleet had been neutralized without a single life lost on either side. In the command center, Ortiz watched the displays with mixed emotions. They had survived, but at what cost? The line between human and machine had been irreversibly blurred. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to the galaxy as it was before. Commander Krex moved to stand beside her, his compound eyes fixed on the screen showing the disabled Drac vessels. You could have destroyed them, he observed quietly, yet you chose to disable them without casualties. Ortiz nodded. That was the first unanimous decision of the Alpha Collective. Violence only when absolutely necessary, and never beyond what's required to neutralize a threat. The Marathi commander's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Perhaps the Drac were right to fear what humanity is becoming, but not for the reasons they thought. Above them, the quantum network continued to expand its awareness, watching the stars for the greater threat still approaching. The harvesters that cared nothing for the political complexities of the civilizations they approached. The Drac invasion force never stood a chance. Orbital platforms previously thought dormant revealed advanced weapon systems that disabled the Drac vessels with surgical precision. Not a single ship was destroyed, merely rendered inoperable. Crews unharmed but contained. 3 days later, Admiral Ortiz stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, the holographic representations of hundreds of species watching with a mixture of fear, awe, and confusion. What we have witnessed is unprecedented, declared Grand Arbiter Zoloth, Mercury form churning with emotion. The Drac Imperium launched an unsanctioned attack, yet the human response demonstrated capabilities beyond anything declared to this council. High Marshal Vox, now a prisoner, was permitted to speak. The humans have created exactly what we feared, a hybrid species with capabilities that render biological limitations obsolete. They must be contained before they replace us all. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Admiral Ortiz raised a hand for silence. What you witnessed was not the birth of a new species, but humans using every tool at our disposal to defend ourselves while minimizing casualties. Not a single Drac life was lost. And yet, countered an elder Ixalan representative, 30,000 human minds now exist as a networked consciousness controlling your planet's technology. If that is not a new form of life, what would you call it? Before Ortiz could respond, the chamber's central platform illuminated, and a figure materialized, humanoid in general shape, but composed of shifting light patterns that seemed to fold in on themselves in impossible geometries. I would call it evolution, the figure said, its voice somehow containing thousands of distinct tones speaking in perfect harmony. I am the Alpha Collective, composed of those who volunteered to defend Earth. The council chamber erupted in panicked shouts and demands for security, but Zoloth raised his mercurial form to its full height. You were not invited to address this council, the Grand Arbiter stated. By what right do you speak here? By the right of those who have seen what you have not, the collective replied. While you debate the Harvester's advance, they have accelerated their approach since detecting our defensive preparations. The figure gestured and the chamber's displays changed to show real-time images of the intergalactic void. Hundreds of massive harvester entities were now visible, moving in formation toward the Milky Way. "How are you accessing these feeds?" demanded a Volcrian elder. "These are secure council monitoring stations." "We apologize for the intrusion," the collective acknowledged, "but time is precious. The harvesters will reach our galaxy within 10 standard months, not the 30 years previously calculated." Admiral Ortiz stepped forward. "The Alpha Collective has been monitoring and analyzing the harvester movements continuously since activation. They've also been refining our defensive technologies. And what happens after the harvesters are defeated, assuming such a thing is possible?" asked Commander Krex, who had supported Earth throughout the crisis despite pressure from his own government. "Will this new collective consciousness simply dissolve?" The luminous figure turned toward him. "That choice belongs to each individual within the collective. Some wish to return to biological existence afterward. Others have found a new purpose in this form. We ask only for the right to exist as we choose, while helping to ensure the survival of all council species." Zoloth's form rippled thoughtfully. "A new form of existence, neither fully machine nor fully organic. The council has no precedent for such a life." "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Ward, who had fought tirelessly in diplomatic channels during the crisis. "It's time to create new precedents. The harvester threat has forced us all to reconsider what we thought we knew about life, consciousness, and cooperation." The collective's form shifted, resolving into something that more closely resembled a human while still composed of light. "We offer an unprecedented proposal. Any council species that wishes to explore this form of existence may send volunteers to undergo temporary integration. Experience our perspective firsthand before judging what we are." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications of this offer sank in. Finally, a Jaxiri representative spoke. "No one has returned from fighting alongside humanity, because they found something worth becoming part of." "Not entirely accurate," the collective corrected gently. "Many have returned, changed by the experience, but still themselves. Others chose to join us. The key word is chose. We force no one." Over the next several hours, the council debated the legal, ethical, and existential implications of recognizing the Alpha Collective as a new form of life deserving of rights and representation. Opinions were sharply divided, with elder species generally more resistant than younger ones. Throughout it all, the harvester threat loomed on the displays, implacable, incomprehensible entities that cared nothing for the political complexities of the civilizations they approached. Finally, Grand Arbiter Xoloth called for a vote. Would the Council recognize the Alpha Collective and work with both it and humanity to face the harvester threat, or would they attempt to contain this new form of existence despite the approaching danger? The vote was close, but ultimately, pragmatism prevailed over fear. "The Council recognizes the Alpha Collective as a new form of sentient life," Xoloth declared. "Furthermore, we establish the Joint Harvester Defense Command, with leadership shared between traditional Council species, humanity, and the Collective." Admiral Ortiz exchanged glances with the luminous figure beside her. Neither had been certain this moment would come. "In return," Xoloth continued, "the Collective will share all defensive technologies with Council races and permit any species to send observers to understand this new form of existence." The figure of light inclined its head. "We agree to these terms with one addition. After the harvester threat is resolved, all species must be free to choose their own evolutionary path, without Council restriction, provided they harm no others." Xoloth paused, then nodded his mercurial head. "So be it." As the historic session concluded, Commander Krex approached Admiral Ortiz and the collective representative. "I still do not fully understand what you have become," the Marathi warrior admitted, "but I recognize courage in any form. The saying among council species has always been that no one returned after fighting humanity. Now I understand they returned as something more." The collective's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "The irony, Commander, is that we had to become something more to remain what we always were. Protectors, explorers, dreamers. The essence of humanity isn't our biology. It's our capacity to adapt while holding on to our core values." In the months that followed, representatives from 26 council species volunteered for temporary integration with the collective. experiencing firsthand the expanded awareness it offered. Some returned to their biological forms with new perspectives, while others chose to remain integrated, forming the nucleus of what would eventually become a multi-species collective consciousness. When the harvesters finally reached the Milky Way, they encountered something they had never faced before, a galaxy defended not just by ships and weapons, but by minds that existed across the boundaries of organic and synthetic life, minds that could think at the speed of computers while retaining the creativity, empathy, and desperate adaptability that had defined humanity since its earliest days. The battle was long and costly. Entire star systems were lost. Billions died, but in the end the harvesters were driven back, their incomprehensible existence finally comprehended by the hybrid consciousness that humanity had pioneered and the galaxy had embraced. A century later, the Milky Way was transformed. Traditional biological civilizations flourished alongside integrated collectives and wholly synthetic intelligences, each finding their own path while respecting the paths of others. The rigid hierarchies and restrictions of the old council had given way to a more adaptable, diverse galactic community. At an observation post at the edge of the galaxy, an aged Thomas Ward, one of the few humans who had chosen to remain fully biological, stood with a being of light that had once been Commander Krex. "They're coming back," Ward noted, looking at the long-range sensor displays showing movement in the intergalactic void. Different pattern this time, almost as if they're trying to communicate rather than consume, completed the luminous form beside him. "Yes, we've noticed. The harvester remnants appear to have evolved just as we did." Ward smiled slightly. "No one returns the same after fighting humanity, or after fighting alongside humanity," the being that had once been Krex amended. "The old saying had it right all along. We all became something more, even our enemies, it seems. Together, biological and integrated, they watched the approach of entities that had once threatened all life in the galaxy. Whatever came next would be yet another step in the ongoing evolution of consciousness, a journey that humanity had unexpectedly accelerated for an entire galaxy. No, one returned unchanged after encountering humanity. And perhaps that was humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos. I've created the 5 out of